This story takes Thanksgiving to a whole other level. It happened a few years ago when I was dating this guy named Mike. We were in a pretty serious relationship to the point where I even moved into his house. He was an alright guy, except he had this unusually weird thing about him. He owned a pet turkey which he kept in his basement. I found it odd as hell, but just went with it. I didn't think it was a big deal seeing as the turkey was harmless and kept away from us and the rest of the house downstairs. Plus, Mike solely took care of the turkey and didn't expect me to help him at all, which I was completely okay with. The day after I officially moved in, I always avoided it. It wasn't like it was a dog or a cat, but Mike would treat it as such. He would keep it in this sizable fenced-in area where the floor was covered in dirt and straw like a barn. There were even troughs for food and water, as well as a dog bed for it, but obviously there was no dog down there. However, things got worse the longer I stayed at the house. All I wanted for him was to get rid of it. The basement slowly turned into a sty. The angrier I got at how dirty it was, the more he would neglect cleaning it. Over time, we would have nasty arguments over it daily. The constant fights over the turkey put so much strain on our relationship that we stopped sleeping together. I stayed in the bedroom upstairs, while he stayed downstairs, setting up a cot on the other side of the basement, next to his turkey. Over the years, and yes, I mean years that this was all going down, my boyfriend slowly lost his mind. He spent most of his time down in the basement. He was treating that animal like a princess, while I was left feeling like he didn't care about me anymore. Obviously, the whole situation was comical to everyone, but terrible for me. At some point, the thought occurred to me that that turkey could all be a distraction from some other woman. It literally felt better to suspect him of cheating on me with a crack whore than to admit the truth. Then, before I knew it, it was Thanksgiving night. I made sure to tell all my friends and family to avoid our house like the plague. But to my surprise, Thanksgiving Day passed without incident. Mike and I had dinner, then we went to our respective sleeping destinations. As Mike made his way downstairs, I went upstairs, washed up, then curled into bed. About an hour or two into my sleep, I remember being awoken by loud, strange noises coming from downstairs. It sounded like my boyfriend was with another woman. He was shouting and grunting, and there was this crazy high-pitched wailing echoing through the house. Furious, I went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, then I went to the basement door. I pressed my ear against the door and tried to listen closely. I couldn't really make out who or what exactly was happening down there, but it sounded freakish, like Mike was cheating on me on Thanksgiving. Left with no other choice, I opened the door and started making my way downstairs.
What the hell are you doing?
If I thought my world turned upside down when I first saw my boyfriend's turkey, my universe completely shattered when I saw what was happening to it. My boyfriend was screwing the goddamn turkey. He had the helpless thing strung up so it couldn't escape as he had his way with it. I'd never seen anything so brutal, so sick. He sounded like he was having the time of his life, so sucked into ravaging the turkey that he had no clue I was even there. I could only stand there and watch for a matter of seconds before I was overcome with rage.
You monster!
Please! Once it was all over, my boyfriend was writhing in a pool of his own blood. The turkey had been abused within an inch of its life and wasn't moving. After hating it for so long, I felt terrible for it at that moment. I can't imagine how much it must have suffered. I called the police right after, not expecting either of them to survive. But in a cruel twist of fate, my ex-boyfriend recovered from his injuries and went to jail for animal cruelty, while the turkey succumbed to the psychological trauma and eventually starved itself to death. I eventually turned myself into the police, so I'm serving multiple years in prison. I know what I did was justified, and there's an argument to be made that I should have gotten off scot-free, but at least my sentence was heavily reduced. However, as much as prison sucks, nothing compares to the weight of this memory in my head. I'll never unsee that sight. No matter what happens for the rest of my life, this will go down as the most horrifying Thanksgiving ever. This Thanksgiving story was inspired by a viral image that surfaced on the internet in the early 2000s. It showcases the mugshots of two distraught individuals who appear to be a couple. In the image, It appears to be a news outlet that headlines the male had intercourse with a turkey on Thanksgiving, and that his girlfriend stabbed him 5 times after finding out. Whether the case is factual or not, we wanted to feature this in today's video and give you guys some extra stuffing for your Thanksgiving stories this year.
Dude, is the camera on? I need to eat.
But you ate 1 minute ago.
I'm not talking about your dump truck. I'm talking about the McDonald's in front of me, saggy nuts.
I know you did, but I'm talking about the buffet we were at 5 minutes ago.
Don't patronize me, boy. I'm gonna eat anything and everything.
Does that mean I get a second round and can't remove the pearls from my—
Shut up and film me, Mr. Tic Tac.
All right, take 1. Action.
I'm not fat, I'm just big boned. That means I was born with a rare condition where my body is able to absorb calcium at a high efficiency. Thus, which is why I'm slightly larger than the average male, but to the average layman, I'm obese. But those fools know nothing about me. To me, they're all just a bunch of keyboard warriors that probably live in their mom's basement, typing away and trying to throw shade at every chance they get. But he cannot throw shade at a man whose shadow is much larger than him. For instance, the internet likes to assume I'm a lazy lard who enjoys eating fast food more than I like to spend time with my loved ones, which is accurate, but everything else they said is a blatant lie. I'm more than just a fast food eater. I'm a mukbanger, an internet sensation, a nationwide global star, an icon that all the food gobbling content creators look up to and aspire to be like. Well, look up to if they could see past my belly. And to all the online trolls and clout-chasing insects, you wish you had a body like mine. You wish you could eat this much food and still be able to maintain a body looking this good. All of you are a bunch of jealous, no good brats who wish you could be me. They sometimes called me a whale, but I personally took it as a compliment, as this is royalty in the kingdom of water, as a lion is at land. And now, all the youngins want to be like me, and not like Mike. I love my food quantity by the dozens, quadrupled. Even that guy from the movie Super Size Me has nothing on me. I like filming myself eat as the masses watch what greatness is supposed to look like. I may not be the goat, but I bet I can eat any goat whole. I like to take my talents from Burger King and join McDonald's. I'm able to draw millions of people from around the world who look at me as the greatest talent to ever grace the earth's fast food joints. It was like I was born with 20 stomachs. There's not another mukbanger on this earth near the realms of my caliber. Not Matt Stoney, not your wife, no one. Me. I usually conducted my mukbangs in the comfort of my own home, but unfortunately went over my credit card limit. That meant that I had to do the most dreadful walk there, which was the first workout I did in years. I was completely drenched in sweat and exhausted by the time I made it to the McDonald's, which was just across the street from where I lived, not even a minute away. I remember buying the usual to conduct my mukbang, which usually consisted in the entire menu, like the Big Macs, McDoubles, McChickens, McNuggets, anything that had a Mick before it, of course, topped with extra large fries. I made sure to not break the forbidden mukbang rule, and to always supersize everything on site. Hell, I even included a Happy Meal for crying out loud.
Anything else, sir?
Do you have any footlongs?
This isn't Subway, sir. This is McDonald's.
I wasn't talking about the sub, you idiot! I would then sit by the back of the restaurant and await my order, while wailing like a big adolescent baby as I was extremely impatient and just wanted my damn food to arrive already. I want my McDonald's now! If I don't get my McDonald's at this very second, I will take my talents back to Burger King! By the time the stupid employee came back and forth several times with my food, I decided to conduct the mukbang here, since I was not down to carry all the food back home, since I wasn't trying to do any heavy lifting. With the exception of lifting food up to my mouth, of course, and other things behind closed doors. By the time I finished, I had to take the biggest dump ever. I squeezed into the bathroom stall and went to work. After a smelly 10 minutes, the most disturbing thing imaginable happened to me. I was stuck in the bathroom stall. I tried to get up to wipe, but couldn't budge. It was like Arthur pulling the sword from the stone, except it was my butt from the toilet, and I was definitely no Arthur. Help! Someone help me! Oh gosh, let me call Josh. Damn it! Oh no, 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 no! Help! After an hour of constant yelling and bowel movements, the washroom was flooded with crap, and it didn't look like anyone was ever going to rescue me anytime soon. To the greatest mukbanger ever. You were not fat, you were just big boned.
Alex, get down here! Alex, I said come down here now!
Just a minute, Mom. I'll be right down.
I said no!
Coming, Mom!
Alex, you lazy piece of crap! You better get down here this instant!
I said I'm coming!
Annoying hag. I'll chop off your head if you dare talk to me like that again!
I'm sorry, Mom.
You're sorry? Yes, you are! You get sorry grades in school! You've got sorry friends! All the girls tell you I'm sorry, but I won't go out with you! You're even a sorry excuse for an athlete!
I said I'm sorry. I won't do it again.
You never do anything! You're just as lazy and useless as your no-good father! I can't believe I let that oaf stuff me! I'll show him! I'll stuff him! I'll see how he likes it! Next, I'll teach that rotten devil spawn of his! Gah! All those years wasted just to raise the spitting image of that pig! If only I had a daughter, I could have shaped her into something I would actually be proud of, and not that crater-faced loser that expects me to wait on him every second of the day. What a workout! Almost as hard as the slaughtering itself. It'll all be worth it though, just to see the look on his face. Technically, all this meat belongs to me. I fed it for 20 years and made sure it lived a life of luxury. Even the Queen of England would be jealous of. Now it's all coming due. Something I should have done decades ago. Alex! How long have you been standing there? Were you just going to watch while I did all the work? You really are just like your father.
I came to help. I just didn't know what was going on in here.
Remember what I said would happen if you kept talking back to me?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. What do you need me to do?
What does it look like I need from you? How about a little help cleaning? I mean, look! This place is a mess! Go grab a bucket and mop for all this wet and gushy stuffing on the floor.
Wait, is this really the stuffing for the turkey this year?
Yes, it is! Do you have a problem with that?
It's just,
Spit it out already! I don't have all day!
I thought stuffing was supposed to be like bread and stuff.
And?
This is all raw guts and a bunch of gross things. I don't want to eat this.
How dare you call my cooking gross, you ungrateful little leech!
Oh, please, get it off! Get it off!
Consider yourself lucky I didn't chop you up and keep you in there. Now, get that mop and start cleaning all this up.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, if I catch any hair in the food, I'm holding you personally responsible. You got that?
Yes, ma'am.
Now hurry up and mop. Dinner has to be done in an hour. Chop, chop.
Mom, can I get a shower after I clean up?
Only if you finish fast enough. Now get going.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Alex! Dinner is ready!
Why couldn't it have been tofu or something?
Alex!
I'm coming!
Open your eyes, Alex! What do you think? Looks delicious, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can't wait to try it.
Now, I know it looks like a lot, but I want you to make sure that you eat the turkey and the stuffing in one bite, okay? This is my first time making this recipe, so I need you to eat it the way it's meant to be eaten.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead now.
What horrible concoction has she managed to put together this time? If only Dad were here to witness this. Come to think of it, where is Dad?
Ahem. What are you waiting for? Try it!
Okay.
Well, what do you think?
It's good. I like it. I love it, actually.
I'm glad you enjoy it. There's plenty for the two of us to enjoy.
Aren't there supposed to be 3 of us?
What do you mean? The whole family is here. Haven't you figured it out by now? He's right here with us, right between where you and I are sitting. Ah!
This story was inspired by a disturbing case revolving around a woman named Omaima Nelson, who allegedly took the life of her own husband named Bill Nelson around Thanksgiving. The woman allegedly committed the act with a pair of scissors and a clothes iron. Omaima claims that she did it in revenge because Bill allegedly cheated and assaulted her multiple times in their relationship. The woman then dismembered the man and then allegedly cooked him, mixing his remains with leftover turkey and disposed of him in a garbage disposal. Neighbors claim that they heard the disposal unit running for hours after the time of Bill's death. She told her psychiatrist that she had cooked her husband's ribs in barbecue sauce and eaten them, but later denied this.
Are you sure you know where we're going?
For the millionth time, yes, I know where it is. I've been there before.
Jeez, I was just making sure. It just feels like we're going nowhere.
We're not going nowhere, we're going to the middle of nowhere, which is just one more thing that makes this house the perfect hit. The nearest police station is 20 miles away, even if there's a new security system installed.
Wait, there might be a security system?
I don't know, maybe, but who cares? I told you it doesn't matter.
Nick, I don't think it's a good idea to hit the same house twice, especially so soon.
Relax, Heather. No one ever expects to get robbed twice in 1 year. Besides, this place is worth the risk.
I just don't feel like taking any risks right now. It's Thanksgiving. Can't we just have a feast with our family like normal people?
Just hurry the hell up. You drive like Grandma.
I'm just on edge, okay?
I promise you, there's only one guy living there. He's an old army vet from Nam or Korea or something like that. As far as I can tell, his wife kicked the bucket years ago, and his kids never come around.
Wait, he's a vet? Like a veteran? This guy could be armed to the teeth.
Relax, he's old. Did you forget that I already robbed this guy? I even got sloppy and the guy never even woke up. I didn't even get to the bedrooms or the basement.
Nick, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I mean, doesn't this make us bad people, just robbing an old veteran on Thanksgiving?
Jeez, when did you go soft? Have you forgotten why we do this? Let me remind you.
Nick, stop it. Hey, stop it! Let me drive!
Come on, cousin. Don't you like fancy jewels? Or are you more of a cold hard cash girl?
Shut up! Why do you even keep that in the car? What do you think would happen if we got pulled over?
Can't you smell it?
Stop it, Nicholas! I'm serious! Get your hands out of my face before I crash!
And we're here.
What?
Yeah, pretty lucky you stopped right here, huh? It's time. Get your head in the game.
Right.
Hurry up and put these on. The guy is definitely asleep by now, but keep quiet. I'll go in through the window and let you in through the door.
Got it.
All set. You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. don't you stay for dinner? Don't you know it's Thanksgiving?
Screw you!
Now just where do you think you're going?
Away from you! Anywhere but here, you monster!
I'm not the one who invited myself in. How about you show a little respect, huh?
Just leave me alone!
Leave you alone? That's exactly what you punks should have done for me. Although, I guess I ought to say thanks to you two for letting me practice the skills I never thought I'd get to use again.
No! No! Get away! Get away!
This story was inspired by a disturbing case that happened on the Thanksgiving of 2012. Two individuals named Haley Kiefer and her cousin Nicholas Brady broke into the home of a 64-year-old man named Byron David Smith. The incident took place in Little Falls, Minnesota. Smith took out the separately and 10 minutes apart as they entered the basement where he was, later stating to police he was worried about them being armed. Smith could be heard in the videotape taunting the victims, saying stuff like, "I don't see them as human, I see them as vermin." The day after, Smith would keep the victims' bodies in the closet. On April 29, 2014, he was found guilty for his actions. The case sparked debate over the castle doctrine, which allows homeowners to defend their home with lethal force. The prosecution alleged that Smith's actions in recording the incidents unfolding showed premeditation and that he used excessive force after having neutralized the threat. He was convicted by a jury and sentenced to life in prison since.
This all happened around the Thanksgiving of 2022. I was going through a divorce from my husband at the time. We'll call him Thomas. We'd been together for a little over 12 years by then. Our marriage started out well, but unfortunately we were still living in the same house until the divorce was finalized. Thomas refused to leave until it was finished, so I was unable to evict him from the house due to state laws. It was a pretty miserable situation, and uncomfortable as hell at home. It got to the point where I always felt sick. Really, it had been bad for the past few years. It was a nightmare being married to Thomas. He had completely changed from the man I met all those years ago into a total control freak. He was emotionally and physically and he had extreme anger issues. If he didn't get his way, he would completely flip out like a toddler. Out of nowhere, he would start screaming and yelling and throwing things.
Thomas, do you mind cleaning up after yourself?
Shut up! You can't say that to me! This is my house! When you start getting down on your knees more often, then we'll talk! You hear me?
It was honestly unsettling to see a grown man behave like he did. He would get so angry over the smallest things. Sometimes I wouldn't even have to say anything for him to blow up at me, so I was finally divorcing him. But ever since I filed, Thomas had been acting even more unhinged. He didn't agree with the divorce at all, and didn't want to lose control over me. I started to notice him intentionally messing the house up, like leaving food and dishes all over the place. Then he would yell at me for the house not being clean. He did anything he could to get under my skin. So every day, I waited for the divorce to be finalized, counting down the days. I stayed in my room whenever I was home, and only ever left when I needed to. I avoided Thomas as much as I possibly could, for my own sanity's sake. He was terrible. Every night I would hear him yelling and talking to himself until really late. I didn't know if he had become an alcoholic or if he had just gone psycho. Whenever he was at work, I would cook and eat and try to do everything before he got home. I didn't want to see him for 1 second. It was like that every day. It really started to wear on me. I felt very ill and unhealthy, and I would throw up on a daily basis. I started to become afraid that Thomas would do something awful, so I placed ring cameras all over the house, just in case he snapped. I wanted to have evidence to use against him. It was that bad. This all went on for months. I never had anything to look forward to. So when it was close to Thanksgiving, I decided I wasn't going to let Thomas ruin that for me too. I invited my family to come over for the holiday at a time when I knew Thomas would be gone. When he went to work the next day before Thanksgiving, I cooked pies, turkey, and a bunch of other food to prepare for the meal the next day. I worried that I wouldn't have enough time to finish all of it before he got home. but I managed it just in time. I rushed to my room just as I heard the front door unlocking. I was relieved to get all the food ready just before he got home. I looked forward to the next day all evening, until I finally went to bed. Then, at around 5 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day, I was awakened by a noise. I didn't know what it was at first, so I listened for it again. There was tussling sounds coming from downstairs, like someone was moving around. It seemed like it had to be Thomas because there was no one else in the house. The more I listened, the more I was sure that he was doing something down there. I was alarmed by this as he was usually asleep at this time. I knew whatever Thomas had going on at 5 a.m. had to be sketchy, so I decided to see what he was up to. I got out of bed as quietly as I could and slowly crept downstairs, keeping all of the lights off. I didn't want him to know that I was awake. There was no telling what he might do if he caught me spying on him. When I made it downstairs, I was surprised to see all the lights were off in the living room and kitchen. It was completely dark. I figured I must have imagined the noises and that Thomas really was asleep in his room. I didn't see why he would be walking around in the dark. I turned on the kitchen light to see if anything looked suspicious. And when I turned around, I saw Thomas sitting in the living room in the darkness, staring at me. I screamed and ran upstairs, scared out of my mind. I made it to my room and immediately locked the door behind me. I didn't know what he was up to, but I was terrified. I knew that it had something to do with me. Then I remembered the Ring cameras. I checked the footage and saw Thomas doing something very suspicious with my Thanksgiving pies. I couldn't fully tell what he was doing, but it looked like he was adding something to them from his pocket. I texted my family about it and they told me to stay in my room until he left. So I waited a few hours, horrified that he might break down my door at any moment. But a few hours later, he finally left for work. I then took the pies down to the police station and filed a report. It was determined that the pies had been laced with some sort of poison. I tried to get the police to arrest Thomas, but they said I didn't have enough evidence. No matter how many times I called them, nothing ever happened. I confronted Thomas about poisoning the pies, but he of course denied everything. He told me that I was losing my mind. I didn't feel safe at home anymore, so I eventually left and stayed in a hotel. It wasn't until we were finally divorced a few months later that I felt safe again. I fully believe the reason I felt ill all this time was because Thomas was poisoning me. I'm just lucky that he never used a killing dose. This story was inspired by horrific hidden camera footage of a man who allegedly tried to poison his ex-wife by lacing her Thanksgiving pies. A Michigan woman named Sarah revealed that her Ring camera may have saved her from a health crisis after she caught the ex-husband in the act. In the video, the ex-husband can be seen lurking around the kitchen. After he checked that no one was around, he grabbed something from his pocket and poured it all over the Thanksgiving pies. The woman explained that this incident happened around 5 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day. She was shocked to see him do this, even though they weren't together at the time. The woman then took the pies to the police the next morning to make a report. However, the woman claims that the police didn't help her and denied her numerous times in the past.
This happened a few years ago around Thanksgiving. I used to work at the butcher and deli section of a supermarket. The job itself was great. I like carving up the carcasses and interacting with the customers to prepare stuff made to order. The general environment of the kitchen had a pretty good vibe. I spent most of my time prepping various cuts of meat, like deboning chicken and cutting steaks. Otherwise, I was cleaning and chatting with my coworkers. The majority of the people I worked with were pretty cool, except for the one guy I spent the most time with. This fat slob named Sean. He was the head of the butcher department, so I trained and worked under him. I was forced to get to know him quite well. He was a real creep though, always pushing the boundaries of what would get him in trouble with the female employees. The guy must have thought I was buddies with him or something, because he was comfortable enough to go overboard with the harassing jokes with me.
Hey Mike, was that your mom that just came in and bought a turkey? Yeah, why? 'Cause she's smoking hot. You never told me your mom was such a MILF? You know the turkeys here got enough room for my stuffing.
He was more immature than myself despite the age difference. One of his favorite things to do was to tell me to go somewhere in the kitchen and grab something, only to watch me fall from the wet floor. He would then come over with a wet floor sign and make a joke out of my expense. I knew the piece of shit was doing it intentionally, literally risking a lawsuit just for a laugh. Despite the humiliation and bruises, I put up with Sean's crap. I didn't want to get on his bad side and make things even worse for myself. That, and I was growing genuinely interested in the idea of working in a butcher or a deli as a long-term career. Maybe even opening my own shop one day. So I needed to get good experience. That said, I always hoped he would call out of work or find something to do that wasn't around me. Then, last year, in the days leading up to Thanksgiving, we got a huge influx of business in the whole store, concentrated on us in the butcher department. Everybody wanted to get their hands on a turkey or a ham. People were coming in at the last minute. For the most part, Sean put his nose to the grindstone and kept up with things. However, something else about his routine also changed. During the 3 days before Thanksgiving, one of our tasks was to prepare the pre-stuffed and pre-brined turkeys. That was the only time of year we did that, just to make it easier for people cooking large Thanksgiving feasts. For that reason, I had never been trained to do it, so it was something I wanted to try for the first time. Unfortunately, Sean wouldn't let me near the process. Something about the whole thing just seemed sketchy as hell, but I couldn't really do much about it. For about an hour each day, he sealed himself off in his own corner of the kitchen and wouldn't let anyone disturb him. And when I got involved, the guy would snap.
Get the hell away from me before I stuff you with my fist!
When I asked why I couldn't be a part of it, he said it was more of a culinary process than a butchering process, so I would probably screw it up. I brushed it off and kept busy. Then at 5 o'clock, my shift ended. I took home one of Sean's pre-prepared turkeys, as the manager of the store let anyone who worked on Thanksgiving Day take home a bird at a heavy discount. But since I was in the butcher department, I got it for free. It was a nice perk to take home to my family. They waited to start cooking until I got home, so we didn't sit down to eat until about 8 or 9 o'clock. I was very much looking forward to the feast after a long day at work, but as everyone was loading up their plates, my phone rang. It said it was an unknown number, so out of curiosity, I answered it. On the other end, I heard a weird, muffled voice that sounded vaguely familiar.
Hey, are you eating turkey for Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Who is this?
Is it stuffed?
Who is this? Is this some kind of prank?
I just thought you should know that the stuffing is full of deadly poison.
Wait, what? What the? Hey, guys, don't eat the turkey. I think it's poisoned.
After I warned my family, I immediately called my boss and told him the pre-stuffed turkeys might be poisoned. He snapped at me, blaming me for the situation and yelling about how I was going to get him sued. But I didn't care if he fired me. I just wanted to save people from getting poisoned. As it turns out, the turkeys actually were poisoned. There were several complaints lobbed at the store about people getting sick after eating them, but luckily, nobody died. However, the store did get sued. By then, I was long gone and working somewhere else. It was never proven, but I know without a shadow of a doubt that Sean was the one poisoning the turkeys. There's no other reason for his secrecy regarding the process of preparing them. I just can't believe I worked so closely with such a sick freak. This story was inspired by a bizarre Thanksgiving incident regarding an anonymous caller who claimed he had injected packages of Lilydale turkey parts with poison. This of course caused the franchise to go into a panic. After examining 1,600 packages of turkey parts at a Victoria grocery chain, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency says it's found no evidence of deliberate poisoning. Despite finding nothing, all the turkeys were destroyed. The company has since raised its quality inspection standards, even though there were no signs of poisoning to mitigate risks of it even happening, since the whole ordeal got media and public awareness.
The next story was loosely inspired by a case that happened in November 26th of 2016. It was a Thanksgiving catastrophe that shocked the nation. The image below is a mugshot of the accused. Stay tuned later on and we will show you what he really looks like. The details are pretty disturbing, so we created an animation based on the alleged occurrence.
I'm already in my 20s, just chilling every so often without a care in the world. While most of my friends and classmates would talk about their jobs as doctors, lawyers, managers, or teachers, I chose to simply lay back as I constantly waited for my parents to pay my bills. Thanks to the old geezers, I didn't have a problem being unemployed. As far as I was concerned, I had everything I could ever want and need. So, as a fat, lazy lard, I'd lock myself in my bedroom, playing my favorite online games, as I rammed potato chips in my mouth, flushing them down my throat with a can of beer. However, just when I thought everything was perfect, my parents suddenly barged into my room one day, cussing me into getting a job.
Get a job! We can't look after you forever, son! I mean, look at you! You're nothing but a massive blob!
Don't you have a dream, Louie? Isn't there anything you'd want more than just sitting around here all day?
Teary-eyed, my mom asked.
Your mother's right. There's gotta be something.
My dad said, eyes scanning the four corners of my room, apparently disgusted. However, I remained fixated on the TV without glancing at my parents and replied, "Nope, I'm happy with the way things are."
Why, you little shit! I ought to beat the funnel cakes out of you!
I knew my dad wanted to hit me, but my mom was always there to stop him. Since that day, it became a daily routine for my parents to knock on my door and into the room, just to give me one hell of a pep talk. And the worst part was that I had to endure it every day. However, as the weeks passed, I eventually got used to it. And my parents' incessant rants would come and go like public utility vehicles. So, as a result, I would live my days consuming anything I found in the fridge, ordering pizza and all sorts of junk food online, while playing games all day without contributing anything useful to the house. But it's not as awful as it sounds. My parents were still healthy and strong enough to accomplish tasks independently and earn vast amounts of money. So, if you really think about it, why should I step in and tire myself out unnecessarily? Isn't it the responsibility of parents to constantly watch over their son regardless of age? Everything was in its proper place, and as far as I was concerned, I was living the dream. My mother would sometimes display the bills for the internet, telephone, groceries, and online games on the table, hoping she could persuade me. However, I remained reluctant to change my lifestyle and didn't pay for a single thing. So when Thanksgiving Day finally arrived, I yelled at my mom to bring me my favorite dinner. It was a special kind of meatloaf I would always request for every Thanksgiving, and without it, my day would be incomplete. "Mom! Thanksgiving dinner! Now!" I hollered even louder when I felt she wasn't paying attention to me. "Mom! The meatloaf! Come on! Step on it, will ya?" Moments later, I could hear heavy steps climbing up the stairs, and when my dad swung the door wide open, he said,
"That's it, Louie! We're no longer paying your bills!"
We're not your slaves, Louie. We're your parents.
It didn't really matter that my parents reprimanded me. However, when my dad said it was time for them to stop paying my bills, the first thing that came to my mind was the end of online gaming. I was devastated. It was something I could never let go of. And besides that, where would I get all that sumptuous food? "Outrage," I replied. "You can't do this to me, you traitors!"
Oh, yes, we can.
My mom yelled.
And that's not all. We're kicking you out if you don't get a job in the next month. You got that, Louie?
Did I hear that right? Surely these two were only having a rough day, and neither could have meant what they said. Mom, Dad, don't you think you're being a little too dramatic right now? It's Thanksgiving, for crying out loud.
I don't think you understand what Thanksgiving means, son.
My dad replied. His gaze penetrated through my skin. Downtrodden, I stood up from my chair, sobbing, frustrated that there were two of them and just one of me. Apparently, there was no way I could win against the majority. Hence, with all my strength, I pushed them out of the room, locked the door, and hollered, Leave me alone or I'm calling the cops!
Louie, this is for your own good.
You're lucky you have 300 pounds on me! As I heard my parents' footsteps slowly fading away, I crouched in a corner, repeatedly asking myself, what am I gonna do? Where am I gonna stay? None of my parents are gonna give me the special treatment I require. Crap! How am I gonna eat? And what'll happen to my computer and to all my games? This is not happening. It's only a bad dream. Pull yourself together, Louie. However, moments later, when my tears had run out, I decided to head downstairs. Then, taking a peek, I saw my parents talking in the dining room. I slipped into the kitchen while my parents assumed I was grabbing food for Thanksgiving. That's when I grabbed a knife that would put an end to his madness. Then, hiding it behind my back, I went into the dining area and immediately began swinging the blade back and forth, like I was a character living in a GTA universe. Suddenly, it was silent. There was no one to tell me what to do. And finally, I was free. And so, wearing my blood-stained clothes, I brought out my console, sat on the couch in the living room, and began playing games. A few minutes later, I put down my controller and started eating my mom's delicious meatloaf. Then, when I finished, I called the cops, waiting to disclose everything that transpired.
911, please state your emergency.
Hi, my name is Louie. I wanted to say Happy Thanksgiving. My mom just made me the best meatloaf and turkey a son could ever ask for.
Sir, may I please ask if this is an emergency or not?
I just wanted meatloaf.
Sir,
My parents wouldn't give it to me, so I had to finish them.
Sir, there should be a dispatcher close to your proximity within the next few minutes.
I made the odd decision to turn myself in, as sirens could be heard in the background.
Sir? Hello? Sir? Sir?
Here's the image of the quote-unquote Louie. His real name was Joel, and did the unthinkable on a Thanksgiving holiday. His parents got the short end of the stick, all because they told him that they would no longer pay his bills. I guess it's safe to say that there will be a different type of meatloaf when he does his time.
It was the night of Thanksgiving. I've been married, had kids, gotten divorced, retired, and watched all my children grow up and leave home. I didn't want to spend my final years alone, nor did I want to remarry, so I decided to get a roommate. That's when I got back into contact with an old friend, a guy named Frank. In all honesty, Frank and I used to be good friends, but that was probably 30 years before we started living under the same roof. Back in the day, we could complain to each other about work, women, and children, but none of that stuff was a factor in either of our lives anymore. As it turned out, we were both bitter assholes who were impossible to live with. Every single day, there was a new pointless argument over some stupid little shit. We could never compromise or work together on anything. We cooked our food and cleaned up our own messes. I had my side of the fridge and he had his. Our bathrooms were separate. Hell, we even had designated seats in the living room. For Thanksgiving this year, neither of our families wanted us around, which left us stuck together. Food was always our biggest point of contention, so there was an unspoken agreement between Frank and I that I would make and eat my own Thanksgiving dinner and he would worry about his own. By the time I was finished, I was exhausted from both the cooking and the heavy eating. The rest of the turkey needed to come to room temperature before I put it in the fridge anyway, so I left it on the counter and went to my room for a nap. But not before giving Frank an explicit warning. Hey, Frank! I'm laying down for a bit. Don't eat my turkey! Sometime later, I woke up much later than I expected. It was night out, which meant I must have slept for at least 3 hours. I turned on my bedside lamp and tried to get a bearing on things. I hadn't planned on sleeping for so long, so I was a bit disoriented. As I came to, I heard some noises outside my door. It didn't sound like one of Frank's TV shows, as it's usually some war documentary playing at maximum volume while he sleeps on the recliner. This was different, quieter. Too quiet for Frank to be listening to it, but loud enough for him to be making the sound. With a significant degree of suspicion, I crept up to my door and opened it. The sounds coming down the hallway were clearer now. It was coming from the kitchen, yet there were no lights on anywhere except my room, so there was no way he could have been cooking. Quietly, I shuffled my way down the hall. I knew Frank wouldn't hear me coming, so I knew whatever he was doing, I was about to catch him red-handed. Once I reached the end of the hall, I poked my head around the corner, and sure enough, there he was. My turkey was still sitting on the kitchen counter, and Frank was hunched over it, pulling it apart with his bare hands and eating it like a wild animal. I don't know what came over me in that moment, but I couldn't contain my anger with him anymore. Frank! Frank! Cut that out! I said hands off my turkey, damn it! Oh shit! Frank! 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 I never meant to make him fall over. I knew he was too old to handle a fall. I was just so angry. All I wanted to do was get him away from my turkey, but I pushed too hard. Way too hard. Reality set in very quickly, and in a last-ditch effort to save Frank's life, I called 911. They took him to the hospital, but there was nothing they could do. His neck was broken in the fall. Knowing he died by my hands, I didn't argue with the police when they arrested me. It's funny to think I became roommates with Frank because I didn't want to die alone, but all I did was kill him, and now I'll be lucky to die with a cellmate.
An 80-year-old man was taken out in an alleged altercation over Thanksgiving dinner, and his longtime roommate and friend charged in his death claims it was merely an accident. Richard Lombardi, 65, entered the courtroom on Friday after being charged with involuntary manslaughter and assault and battery on a person over 60. Lombardi's roommate, Frank Griswold, was pronounced dead at the hospital on Wednesday night after police say he was pushed to the ground by Lombardi, hitting his head and breaking his neck and nose in the fall. According to court documents, Lombardi said he asked Griswold not to go near the turkey he had made for Thanksgiving dinner. When Griswold went into the kitchen to wash dishes near the turkey, Lombardi grabbed him and pushed him to the side, causing his feet to be tangled underneath him, sending him to the ground. The two men were friends and had been living together since 2001. Lombardi is currently being held without bail.
This may be the most horrifying Thanksgiving story ever. What happened still traumatizes me till this day, but I think now is the best time to share it. It all happened a few years ago. I had just recently moved to the US and was working as a model. It wasn't a great gig, but it was the only work I could find. I didn't make much money as a model. It was barely enough to survive. I ended up having to rent the shittiest apartment I could find, and I was still late on my rent half the time. I never seemed to be able to catch a break. It went on like that for years. I got more and more desperate as time went on. By the time I was 24, I was even worse off than I was before, and it was only a matter of time before I was out on the streets. Then one night, I met this older guy at a bar. We had a few drinks together, and he ended up offering to let me stay at his place in exchange for being intimate. I knew it was probably a bad idea, but I was desperate. I agreed to do it. Things escalated quickly after that. We ended up getting married within a month. I was desperate as hell and figured the trade-off of being taken care of financially would be worth it. The guy had a really nice place, and I finally didn't have to worry about where my next meal was coming from. The guy seemed okay too, but all of that quickly changed. It didn't take long for me to realize what an asshole the man was. He treated me horribly. The old piece of shit was just using me, and I had to go through with it every time he wanted to. I hated it, but I didn't have a choice. I had to put up with the rich drunk just to make it through life. It went on like that for a while. I wasn't desperate for money anymore, but I didn't know if I was better off than before or not. Then one night, the two of us were watching TV a few days before Thanksgiving. My husband got drunk as we sat there, which was typical for him. He couldn't go 10 minutes without having a beer. I was pretty used to it at that point. Then, as we sat there, he suddenly turned to me and asked me if he could stuff me like a turkey. I refused, but he kept asking me over and over again. It was obvious that he was completely plastered, so I snapped and blew up at him.
It's not going to happen, so just leave me the hell alone.
My yelling caused him to stop talking for a moment, and I thought that I had finally gotten him to shut up. But then out of nowhere, the guy went apeshit and lunged at me.
I should've got a prenup!
Before I could even react, the psycho grabbed me and tried pinning me down. I kicked and screamed, trying to break out of his grasp. The guy was too drunk to hold me down for long. I then finally managed to break free and run to the washroom. I was able to lock myself in, just as the monster caught up with me. He then started banging on the door and throwing his whole body against it, trying to break it down. He kept banging on the door until he eventually passed out. I waited in the washroom, sobbing. I didn't know what to do. I knew I was safe here and better off waiting for the rest of the night. Eventually, hours went by. I didn't hear him out there again. I didn't know where he had gone, but I knew that I had to take my chance. I slowly opened the door, but there was nothing. He was nowhere around. It was dark everywhere. I paused for a moment, wondering what to do. Then I eventually armed myself with the clothes ironed and scissors from the bedroom, and then walked back out. I then slowly crept down the stairs and walked to the living room. I was shitting bricks. I knew he had to be in there. I tried to be as quiet as I could. The TV was still on when I got there, and my husband was passed out drunk on the couch. From the looks of it, he had been out for a while. I stood there staring at him. At first it was minutes, but then it was a few hours. I didn't move once. I just stood in place, still holding the scissors and the clothes iron. It felt like forever, but he eventually woke up. It didn't take long for him to see me standing there. He blinked a few times, obviously confused.
What are you?
A few days later, it was Thanksgiving. I woke up early to get everything ready. There was a lot to do. I made the stuffing for the turkey first. It took a while, but I knew it was going to be worth it when it was time to eat. It was finally going to be ready. I was hungry as hell. His relatives eventually started calling his phone every single day, but he never seemed to answer though. I didn't bother to answer it either. I didn't want to jeopardize and interfere with any of his calls. The cops eventually showed up, and I was arrested not long after that. It wasn't until they took me away that I fully realized what I had done. I've been traumatized by Thanksgiving ever since, but I don't regret what I did. This story was inspired by a disturbing Thanksgiving story that we did last year, but wanted to revisit it, as it might be the creepiest Thanksgiving case still to this day. The case we are talking about is a 24-year-old woman named Imagary Ari Nelson, who is known as the real-life cannibal, Hannibal Lecter. She was an Egyptian nanny and model. It started out like any other Thanksgiving day in November of 1991, but instead of turkey, Imagary's husband, Mr. Nelson, was on the menu. It was reported that Imagary would sleep with a lot of older men growing up in exchange for renting cars. William Bill Nelson, a 56-year-old pilot, would eventually meet with Imagary in a bar. They seemed to fall in love pretty quickly, as they were married within a month, but things went left very quickly between the two shortly after. On Thanksgiving Day, Imagary would take the husband out with a clothes iron and scissors. She would then chop and use his remains with leftover Thanksgiving turkey. She was arrested after, and allegedly offered a friend money to help her dispose of it. She was convicted and sentenced to 28 years to life.
This has got to be downright one of the most scariest Thanksgiving stories out there, so let's just get straight to the animation. I lived alone in an apartment with my pet Doberman Toby. I had moved away from my parents' place ever since I got a full-time job as an IT tech. Thanksgiving was just around the corner, and I had planned to stay by my parents' place for a few days after months of being away. However, although I was looking forward to it, one thing made me anxious: my mother. Being the eldest son who was still single, the task of caring for the woman who raised me was entrusted to me since she was now suffering from dementia. One moment she'd be on cloud 9, and then all of a sudden she'd be acting out of pocket like the girl possessed from the Exorcist movie. And if that wasn't creepy enough, I even saw her in the living room once talking to herself, laughing and crying simultaneously as she stabbed one of our family portraits displayed on the table with a kitchen knife.
He's not part of the family! He's not part of the family! He's not part of the family!
I had no idea what she was talking about, but after seeing a lot of videos online, everything was leading back to dementia. I didn't know how to respond to the situation, afraid she'd be ridiculed if friends or relatives dropped by the house. However, I vividly remember one of the videos talking about the ability of animals being able to alleviate the suffering of people diagnosed with chronic ailments. So that's when I stopped by the house with Toby one day and was greeted by my mother at the front door. She stared at me for quite a while, making me uneasy. So to withdraw from this awkward situation, I gently pulled my dog by the leash, thinking I should bring him inside the house. However, to my surprise, my mother gripped my other hand ever so tightly, saying,
Get rid of that rodent! You understand me? I don't feel good around that dog!
I replied, Mom, it's just Toby. He used to live in this house before, remember? I took him away when I moved out. Can you at least try to remember that? However, she frowned upon me, mistaking it for disrespect.
How dare you! You're in no position to defy me!
Mom, if I'm coming over for Thanksgiving, then so is
To
Toby.
hell with that dog! You only want him for yourself. You can't fool me!
People around me would always talk about patience, reminding me that her behavior was simply the result of her ongoing condition. But there's a limit to everything. Once the cup is full, everything would fall into disarray. Frustrated, I shouted,
No, he's not going anywhere! You're the reason why I wanted to move out!
Frightened, Toby ceased to wag his tail, slowly hiding behind my legs, and at that moment, I saw my mother's eyes brimming with hate. Then, seconds later, her mood changed again, as she smiled and said,
All right, we'll have it your way. Come in, little boy. Who's a good boy? Yes, you are.
She caressed Toby's head and brought him inside, as I stood there delirious, and nothing out of the ordinary transpired in the days that followed. However, just when I thought she had gotten closer to Toby, I heard her hollering in the dining room one night. I got up to check on her and saw that she was distraught by all the broken plates scattered on the floor. Then, as soon as she saw me, she yanked me by the collar and said,
Donate this dog. Give him away or leave him in the forest. I don't care. Just get rid of him.
I didn't know what to make of it, since Toby was well behaved the entire time. For all I know, my mother could have been the one responsible for all the broken plates, coercing me to cave in. I ended up getting a broom and sweeping the sharp pieces of glass away, while I saw my mother scamper to her room, leaving me to clean up the mess. I figured I'd bring Toby around the next time we had dinner, in hopes that if she saw my father around Toby, then maybe she'd eventually warm up to him. One night, I went into the kitchen to get myself a glass of water, and could hear my mother's voice in the living room talking to our dog. I didn't want to frighten her, and so I gradually walked toward the room and took a peek.
It'll all be over soon, you rodent. You don't belong here. My son's right. It's no use giving you away. That wouldn't suffice. What we need is a permanent solution. It's time to give thanks.
Toby barked in a tone that would imply he was threatened, and for the past couple of weeks, the only time he was ever anxious was whenever my mother was around. So, as most people would do, it would have been reasonable to have kept the dog next to me at all times. However, seeing that she never inflicted physical harm on the dog, I felt that there was no need to intervene, and that ignoring her would be the best course of action. She was indeed known for her bad temper. However, I never saw her as someone who could take the life of a living creature. The night night before Thanksgiving, my father finally arrived home from his long business trip, and when I suggested buying dinner for us, he immediately gave me the thumbs up. However, it was different for my mother though. Enraged, she kept raving about how she was the woman of the house and that she was the only one responsible for preparing the meals at home. My father and I looked at each other, puzzled and anxious. Finally, to avoid making matters any more awkward, we let her have her way due to her condition and persistence. The following day, I arrived home from a quick stroll at the grocery store to pick up some sides for the Thanksgiving dinner with my parents. I remember seeing my mother placing a massive platter with a silver lid on the table. Crawling its way from the kitchen, the aroma was enticing and irresistible. My father and I couldn't wait to dig in. However, as soon as my mother lifted the silver lid, our jaws dropped, and my father stood in horror at the sight of something that was definitely not a turkey. She glanced at my father and me, saying,
I thought of being more creative this year, so bon appetit!
And just like that, Toby went from an adorable pet to a nauseating dinner that would leave me traumatized forever.
Every year as it gets closer to Thanksgiving, I'm reminded of what happened all those years ago. It was easily the most horrific experience of my life, but it all started out so normal. There was no way to see it coming. I still don't fully know where it all went wrong. Decades ago, back when I was still pretty young, I lived near my family in Ohio. It was just a few days before Thanksgiving, and we all headed over to my Aunt Martha and Uncle Albert's house for a customary Thanksgiving dinner. Aunt Martha loved to host big family events, especially Thanksgiving. She and Uncle Albert would always cook multiple turkeys and whip out a ton of sides and desserts for the occasion. They would invite everyone over for a huge party, and every family member who could make it would be there. There were cousins, grandparents, aunts, uncles, nephews, and nieces. It was incredibly chaotic and crowded. That year, though, was different. Unfortunately, Uncle Albert had passed away earlier that year. Aunt Martha took it really hard. She had been a manic wreck ever since the funeral. Everyone tried to comfort her, especially me and my family, since we lived the closest, but she was inconsolable. Every night, Aunt Martha would wail and cry and act incredibly erratic. It was difficult to be around her, but we tried to do what we could. We all felt sorry for her. Then it all changed. A few months after Albert's funeral, Aunt Martha announced that she had found a new companion, a man named Derek. We were all surprised that she would date someone so soon after her husband had passed, but we were happy that she had decided to move on. That is, until we met the guy. I got a really bad feeling about him as soon as I laid eyes on him. He looked really sketchy, and everyone who spoke to him could tell he was no good. He acted like a jerk to everyone in the family. Plus, he was very abusive and he took advantage of Martha. She started acting even crazier once he was around. It was terrible. None of us could recognize her anymore. She barely wanted anything to do with us. My parents tried to convince her to leave Derek once, but she immediately refused and went apeshit on them.
Now, you just want me to die alone? You're all selfish.
No one could convince her otherwise, despite the things that we all had heard about him. So this is what was going on when we headed to Aunt Martha's house for Thanksgiving. None of us could believe it when she said that she still wanted to host. We all assumed that with Albert gone and the way she had been acting, it was never going to happen. Aunt Martha insisted though. She said she always hosted Thanksgiving and that was never going to change. I really wasn't looking forward to it. I begged my mom to make up an excuse not to attend.
Mom, it's going to be awkward there. Aunt Martha is basically insane, and none of us can even stand Derek. It's going to be hell.
But she insisted we go. We all put our feelings aside and went to Martha's event, hoping that it wouldn't be a disaster. When we got there, I was surprised by how many others had shown up. It was pretty much the same people as always. The whole family had made the trip. That made me feel a lot better, and I started to think that the whole night wouldn't be that bad. Of course, I was wrong. It was incredibly awkward right from the beginning. No one in the family liked Derek, and no one was doing a good job of hiding it. On top of that, Aunt Martha seemed even crazier than the last time I'd seen her. She barely spoke to anyone, and she seemed incredibly nervous about something. When we all finally sat down to dinner, I didn't eat a thing. I was too uncomfortable. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. As everyone else ate, they all tried to make conversation, but it was short and tense. There was none of the joy and holiday cheer like there had been when Albert was still around. There was just a lot of awkward stares and short sentences. This went on for several minutes. I stared at the table in front of me and didn't say anything. feeling completely miserable. Then, I glanced over at Aunt Martha to see how she was doing. She actually looked a lot happier, but something about her made me feel uneasy. She had the strangest smile on her face. It was really creepy and unnatural. I had the weirdest feeling that she was waiting for something to happen. But before I could think about it anymore, everything went to shit.
Everyone at the table started choking on their food. One of my cousins fell out of their chair and frantically clawed at their throat. Their eyes rolled into the back of their head. People started vomiting left and right and going apeshit. It was like a zombie apocalypse. Everywhere I looked, one of my family members was choking or throwing up. Everyone was screaming and gasping for air while they rolled around the floor. Several people simply passed out right onto the table. I couldn't grasp what was happening. My whole family was going insane. I was panicked and disoriented, but I still managed to call 911.
Hello? Please send help. I think my family is poisoned. Help!
Everyone was immediately taken to the hospital. My grandmother and 2 others in the family died not long after. Everyone else was incredibly ill and in urgent care. The doctors told us it was rat poison. I mentioned my suspicions about Aunt Martha to the cops and they arrested her for questioning. She claimed that she was retaliating against the family and blamed it on her being mentally ill, along with saying her new companion Derek forced her to do it. Unfortunately, the real reason was a lot darker. Ever since her husband's death, Martha had become obsessed with attending funerals, no matter who died. She somehow got a high off of going to funerals and poisoned everyone with the hopes that she would be able to go to multiple. I've been traumatized during Thanksgiving ever since. I don't even celebrate it anymore. With the memory of that night still in my mind, there doesn't seem to be much to be thankful for. The story was inspired by a Thanksgiving case regarding a woman named Martha Wise. On the evening of Thanksgiving, several members of the family, including Martha's mother Sophie, fell ill with a severe stomach ailment. The others recovered shortly, but the mother's illness worsened, which resulted in her passing away around Christmas time. But things got even worse around New Year's Eve when Martha's husband Fred and several of their younger family members all began suffering stomach pains similar to what Sophie had experienced before her death. Several family members were hospitalized, and 2 others died shortly after. In total, 17 relatives were taken ill with similar symptoms, leaving some partially paralyzed from the mysterious illness. It was later revealed that Martha had poisoned her family on Thanksgiving and onwards, and blamed it on being mentally ill and that her new lover had ordered her to poison her family. It turns out that she had developed a sick obsession with attending funerals after her first husband died.
I think about this every year on Thanksgiving. It's the most chilling and sickening thing I've ever seen. I'm an officer of the Inverness Police Department in Florida, so I've seen quite a lot. But this was worse than anything. It was Thanksgiving Day. I was working, and unfortunately not with my family. I was annoyed about it, but I knew it came with the job. The day went by slowly for the first few hours, leaving me even more unprepared for what was about to happen. I was near the station when the call came in.
You've reached 911 Emergency Services. Please describe the nature of your emergency.
Please, you gotta get the cops here now.
Sir, please tell me what's happening.
I think my neighbor killed somebody.
And why do you think that?
Because I saw it. I was on my back porch setting up the deep fryer when I just looked over the fence for a second, and I saw my neighbor dragging something large. It looked like a body or something.
Sir, please calm down and tell me the address so I can send some officers to check on your neighbor.
I was one of about 7 or 8 officers initially dispatched to the scene. We were told to take caution, as a suspected homicide had occurred, so we approached the house carefully. There was a car parked in the driveway, but the garage door was closed. We also saw some tire tracks in the grass, leading from the car to a wide gate in the backyard. Nobody was in the car, but once we got about 6 feet from it, we were absolutely blasted with a putrid odor. It was that unmistakable stench of decay that you never forget. It made me throw up in my mouth. None of us were willing to attempt to open the trunk or search the inside of the car. The smell was enough to call for backup. We didn't know what to expect as we approached the front door, but we knew in our guts that we were dealing with a dangerous person. There was no answer when we banged on the door and announced ourselves. After several attempts to get the person inside to come out, we conducted a search of the exterior of the house. 2 fellow officers and I went around to the right side, following the tire tracks through the gate and into the backyard. As soon as we turned the corner, we were met with the grisly scene. In the center of a concrete slab was a huge pool of blood. A smear ran about 8 to 10 feet from the puddle across the concrete and ended where the grass started, right at the tire tracks. Next to the puddle was a large meat cleaver covered in blood. At this point, all the alarms went off. We called in for even more backup, quickly surrounding the house. I returned to the front of the house with the other officers and began pounding on the door. "Police, open up the door, we're gonna break it down. Come out with your hands up." A chill ran down my spine at the sound that came from inside. We knew what we had to do then, so we got the battering ram and broke down the door. We entered the house 8 deep with our weapons drawn, but we didn't get far before another terrible sight put an end to our search. There was an older man on the living room couch, smiling and staring off into space. There was blood soaking into his shirt. Something about that image made me freeze. I've never seen something so creepy like that in my life. He acted like we weren't even there. One of my fellow officers ended up making the arrest a moment later, throwing him off the couch and onto the ground. The man didn't struggle against the handcuffs at all. He was gaunt and unbothered by the whole ordeal. We called in an ambulance and the paramedics took him away under our supervision. He later died at the hospital, taking all his secrets with him. However, at the time, we were still at the house, and there was a body we had to look for. When CSI arrived and asked us where the body was, everyone pointed to the car in unison. When the investigators got near it, they looked in through the windows, but there was nothing. That left the trunk which they had to pry open. I remember standing behind the investigators at the car, far enough away to keep from gagging. Despite knowing what was going to be in there, I had a morbid and regretful curiosity about what led to that massacre scene I saw in the backyard. I'll never forget the moment that trunk flew open, revealing the worst thing I have ever witnessed in my entire life. There were body parts in the trunk. It had been chopped up into pieces and tossed in without a care. The sheer terror I felt at that moment was something I never felt in all my years on duty. I had to go back to the station after that. I wasn't part of the investigation, but I kept tabs on it. Apparently, the man that was on the couch had taken out and dismembered the victim and stuffed him in his own trunk. The victim was also an older man, but aside from that, there was no connection between them. There was no known motive either. The vehicle belonged to the victim. To have no reason for such a horrific incident is just unbelievable to me, and it leaves a pit in my stomach every time I think about it. I just hope the family of the victim can somehow recover from their loss. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a 75-year-old Florida man named Jonathan Dimmick Sr., who was found dead on Thanksgiving Day after he allegedly dismembered another man. The suspect then placed the remains in the trunk of his car. Deputies raced to a home in the area of Post Street and Eden Drive to perform an urgent welfare check after getting a call about a possible slaying. When police arrived, they knocked on the front door and announced themselves, but received no answer. Deputies then began checking the home's perimeter. That's when they spotted in the backyard a large butcher-style knife, along with blood and drag marks on the ground. The deputies continued trying to contact Jonathan Dimmick Sr., who they identified as a suspect in the crime. Deputies then entered the home and found Dimmick sitting in his living room unresponsive, with an apparent wound to the abdomen. He was treated at the scene by first responders and then airlifted by a helicopter to a hospital, where he later passed away from his injuries. Meanwhile, deputies continued their investigation and eventually made a gruesome discovery of the dismembered remains of a 67-year-old man named James Banks in the trunk of his own car. A Citrus County sheriff made a statement saying the scene was absolutely shocking and that it was unfortunate that the suspect will never be prosecuted for his brutal crime. Police took solace in knowing that the victim's family can now begin their grieving process with the knowledge that no one will ever again suffer by the hands of Mr. Dimmick. The sheriff's office has not said how Banks may have known Dimmick. What makes the case even more unsettling was that there was no motive for the slaying allegedly. I Everyone always says that the holidays can be difficult times, but I think I've experienced that more than most. People still can't believe it when I tell them what happened. It's all true though. It happened back in 2012, around Thanksgiving. I had been married to a cop for a few years. I liked the idea of being married to an officer. It made me feel like I'd be protected. Our relationship wasn't that great though. We were close at the beginning, but my husband started drifting away as time went on. We became less intimate and sometimes went days without even talking to each other. That was mostly because of him though. He was always at work, and when he was home he'd do work in the backyard. I often wondered how he could come home from a 12-hour shift and still want to do yard work. He was practically obsessed with it. I never knew exactly what he did out there. We became more and more distant each day. Sometimes I would try to talk to him more, but he would always be in a really angry mood and snap back at me. I assumed it was because of his work. Being a cop had to be very stressful. He never talked about it though. Despite everything, we had planned to make the most of Thanksgiving that year. In fact, my husband said, "Hey, let me cook Thanksgiving dinner this year, okay?" He actually seemed pretty excited about it. I was happy to see him finally take an interest in spending time with me. We went to sleep the night before Thanksgiving, and I felt pretty happy about the upcoming celebration. Later that night, I woke up from a noise in the room. I realized that it was my husband moving around. I was about to ask him what he was doing, but he left the room so suddenly. He was obviously trying to make as little noise as possible. I felt really groggy, but it was too suspicious for me to go back to sleep. He had to be up to something. I waited a few minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back. I then heard the back door opened and knew that he must be stepping outside. I thought it was strange as hell as my husband wasn't a smoker and had no business being out this late at night. I figured he was going to do some yard work or something. I wanted to get a closer look, so I slowly crept over to my bedroom window and peeked out through the curtain. My husband was outside, wearing a black hoodie, black pants, and black boots. He looked incredibly shifty, which was very uncharacteristic of him. He was a cop after all. He didn't usually dress like he was about to rob someone or something. I watched as he headed over to the shed and went inside. A few seconds later, he came out dragging a large garbage bag behind him. I started to freak out. The bag looked exactly like a body. I told myself that it had to be cop gear or something like that. There was no way that my husband had a body in a garbage bag. I still felt terrified. There was just something so creepy about seeing him out there, dressed in all black that late at night. He continued to drag the bag through the yard, then suddenly stopped and looked up at me at my window. I immediately ducked and started freaking out even more. I had no idea if he'd seen me. I crawled back to bed as fast as I could. Then I listened for any sign that he was coming back to the room. Instead, I heard the car start and then drive off a few seconds later. I got up and checked out the window to make sure that he was really gone. The driveway was empty. The whole situation was so sketchy. I didn't know what was going on, but I felt very uneasy. There was no good explanation for what my husband was doing. I looked around the house to see if he had left any clues behind, but there was nothing. Then I saw a small light coming from the den. I went inside to find my husband's laptop sitting on the desk still turned on. I checked to see what he had been up to. There was a blog post up on the screen that appeared to be from the account that he was signed in with. I didn't know why he would be writing a blog in the middle of the night, but I started reading what he said. As I read it, I immediately started to feel extremely sick. The whole post discussed different fantasies of my husband kidnapping me, chopping me up, and eating me for Thanksgiving. It went on for pages and pages, each fantasy more detailed than the last one. He even talked about abducting multiple women and doing the same thing to them. It was all so horrible and disgusting. I felt incredibly nauseous. I couldn't believe that my husband had written such horrific things. After the initial shock wore off, I realized that I couldn't stay there waiting for my husband to come back. I changed clothes and headed over to my neighbor's house to call the cops. The neighbors were very confused as to why I was disturbing them so late at night, but I quickly explained everything to them. I called the police and they came right over to wait for my husband. A few hours later, he came back and they immediately arrested him for conspiring to murder his wife and the other women he had written about. Later on, it was revealed that my husband had already kidnapped and killed someone. He had hid their body in the shed, which is what I saw him disposing that night. I am convinced that my husband was a cannibal. I can't imagine what would have happened to me if I hadn't caught him that night. Till this day, I'm still traumatized every Thanksgiving. This story was inspired by a case about a former NYPD officer named Gilberto Vale, who fantasized about kidnapping, butchering, and eating women for Thanksgiving. Gilberto's ex-wife had allegedly discovered reams of cannibalistic content on his computer and immediately reported to the authorities. His posts contained detailed and disturbing plots about barbecuing women and eating their ribs. The man has since been sentenced before he could have any kind of feast he fantasized about before Thanksgiving. I've been dating this girl named Candy for a couple of months. We eventually wanted to move in together after some time, suggesting that I move in with her and her parents. That way we could save up and get a place of our own. I was of course nervous as hell considering I never met her parents before. Candy suggested I meet them for Thanksgiving and to pitch the idea to them, so I agreed. On the night of Thanksgiving, I came over to her house. When I finally met her parents, I started having second thoughts. Her mom was nice, but her dad was a whole other story. He was this angry old pastor that didn't look right in the head. Whenever he looked at me, he gave me this dirty look like I was a piece of shit that didn't belong in the household. The mere idea of me being with his daughter in any capacity, let alone moving in with her before getting married, clearly went against every single one of his values.
So, Dad, Andrew decided to move into my room.
What the hell did you just say? Over my dead body!
Well then maybe you should die!
I just sat there as they argued the entire night. By the end of the night, it had been decided. I was moving in. I felt nervous about the whole thing, but Candy said it would be fine. Despite her reassurance, things didn't go great. Her dad didn't want me there. He gave me dirty looks whenever we crossed paths, and he was always talking about how Candy and I should break up. I spent as much time as I could at work, and whenever I got home, I would lock myself in our bedroom. I was always too scared to be out in the living room alone. It wasn't just me he was having problems with either. He was always arguing with his wife and daughter, usually about me. I honestly couldn't understand how he was ever a pastor, because the man had severe anger management problems. But many nights, we could hear him breaking things downstairs, and on several occasions, he even tried to break through our door, knowing how violent he could get. I begged Candy to just move out with me, even if we had to sleep on the floor for a few months, but she was adamant. She and her mother were dead set on proving to her father that he couldn't control them anymore. They would rather play the game of cat and mouse to avoid him than leave. We did it for an entire year, and honestly, it was hell. Finally, Thanksgiving rolled around once again, the anniversary of when everything went wrong. Candy's dad was supposed to be working late at the church for a special Thanksgiving charity event, which meant that at least for one night, we could have a little peace and quiet. We cooked a decent Thanksgiving feast, with plenty of leftovers planned of course, then set the table for 3. As the man of the house for the evening, I carved the turkey, then we finally sat down to eat. At last, it seemed like we could breathe, but then all of a sudden, Candy's father returned home early. He walked into the dining room and looked at us, then walked away into his room. We didn't know what to expect, if he would just stay in there or demand to be seated, so we just waited. A moment later, he came back out, then stood in the entrance to the dining room. He hadn't changed clothes or said anything, and he wasn't making any impression like he wanted to sit down. He just stood there, staring at us, until we all started to eat again. The situation was bizarre and awkward as hell. We weren't tasting the food anymore, only swallowing it so the silence was a little more bearable, so we wouldn't have to make eye contact with him. Without warning, he turned off the lights. We all just sat there in a deafening silence. Across the table, I could vaguely see Candy becoming more upset with every passing second. She was fed up, ready to lash out once and for all, but I knew something was wrong.
What the hell is your fucking problem?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Hello? I would like to report a shooting.
A Virginia youth pastor is jailed and being charged in the Thanksgiving night deaths of his wife, stepdaughter, and the stepdaughter's boyfriend. Christopher Gaddis, 58, was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of using a firearm. Allegedly, an argument erupted, though the exact details remain unclear. It's known that the conflict centered on long-standing tensions between Christopher and his stepdaughter, Candy, as well as her boyfriend, Andrew. As the argument escalated, Gaddis retrieved a firearm. He then took out his wife, Janet, and stepdaughter inside the home. Andrew tried to escape but was taken out just outside in the front yard. Neighbors heard the ordeal, but Chris called the authorities, not 911, but his alarm company. When police arrived, they found Chris Gaddis calmly waiting on the porch. He was arrested on the spot. There had been friction between Chris and Candy. Gaddis reportedly disapproved of the couple staying in his home. These tensions came to a boiling point that Thanksgiving night, resulting in unimaginable violence.
This all happened years ago when I was a teenager. I lived with my parents then out in a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs. Nothing ever really happened there. That is, until one year around Thanksgiving. I'm an only child, so my parents got me a dog to keep me from feeling lonely. I loved the dog and spent a lot of time with him whenever I was home. I thought of him as my best friend. His name was Cooper. Besides Cooper, my family and I were friendly with our next-door neighbors. My parents were close with the parents, and I was good friends with their son Tyler. We'd often all go over to their house or invite them over for dinner. It was nice to have a friend so close by. Tyler was a very large kid, at least a couple inches taller than me and much heavier set. The guy ate a lot, and he would pig out every time my family would invite him and his parents over for Thanksgiving each year. We got along great and hung out all the time. Tyler would come with me when I took Cooper for walks around the neighborhood, and would game with me a couple times a week. Besides eating a lot, Tyler was really into the outdoors and hunting and everything. He had this thing where he would practice shooting a bow and arrow in his backyard. My family and I were happy to live next to Tyler and his parents. That is, until Thanksgiving. That changed everything. One night, the night before Thanksgiving, I was tossing and turning, not fully able to fall asleep. I kept hearing noises in the backyard. There was a sound like something scraping against the fence. I didn't know what it could be, but it was really annoying. Then, Cooper started barking loudly, and that just made me even more annoyed.
Cooper, shut up! It's the middle of the night!
I knew he just had to be barking at some animal out there. It happened before. I thought about going out there to calm him down, but I was so tired. I didn't want to get out of bed. I tried to ignore it as much as I could. Finally, Cooper stopped barking, and I was able to fall asleep. The next morning, I woke up pretty late, since I'd been up for so long the night before. Something felt off, but it took me a while to realize what it was. Then it hit me. Cooper wasn't barking. This was unusual. Cooper always started barking in the morning until someone went outside to greet him. He didn't like to be left alone for so long. I figured he just had to still be asleep, so I wasn't too worried. I took my time getting out of bed, and then went out to the backyard to check on Cooper. When I got there, though, Cooper was gone. I looked all over the backyard, and he was nowhere to be seen. I started to panic, but I thought maybe my parents had already let him inside. I checked all over the house, but he wasn't there either. I was really freaking out. The backyard was completely fenced in. There was no way that Cooper could have gotten out by himself. I asked my parents, and they hadn't seen him all morning.
I ran over to the house behind us and asked them, but they hadn't seen anything either. I even asked Tyler, but he said the same. No one had seen Cooper anywhere. My parents and I later went around the whole neighborhood, asking people if they had seen a dog, and looking for Cooper ourselves. We didn't have any luck anywhere. I was completely distraught. I couldn't bear to think of my dog being lost anywhere. Then I remember the noises I heard the night before. That had to have been when Cooper got out. I wish more than anything that I had gone to check on him then. Then I remember the noises I heard the night before. My parents and I were starting to lose hope, but we went to one more house. Its backyard was very close to ours, so we hoped that they would know something. A man answered the door. He said that he hadn't heard anything, but he had security cameras set up around his house and in the backyard. He let us check the footage. At first we didn't see anything. Then, suddenly, someone came sneaking up to our fence. It was hard to make him out in the dark, but I suddenly caught a glimpse of his face. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was Tyler. He was looking over our fence into the backyard, and he had his bow and arrow with him. I watched with horror as he slowly brought it out and fired an arrow into the yard. After that, Tyler hopped the fence and disappeared from the camera's view. He climbed back over a few seconds later. He had Cooper with him. He shot him with the arrow. I screamed at the camera in complete disbelief. Tyler carried Cooper back towards his house and was gone. I was terrified. I had just watched my friend kill my dog in the middle of the night. My parents immediately reported Tyler to the police. He was arrested the same day. They discovered that Tyler had actually cooked and eaten my dog for Thanksgiving dinner. The whole time I had been friends with some kind of sick lunatic. He was charged with armed burglary, armed trespassing, theft of livestock, and animal cruelty. My parents and I haven't talked to the neighbors since. We moved out a few years after that day. Tyler was still in prison, but it was still too hard to be so close to where it all had happened. I've never forgiven myself for not checking on Cooper that night. I still can't believe someone I had been so close with could have done what he'd done. Tyler had to be some sort of psychopath. I'm still traumatized by Thanksgiving to this day. This story was inspired by a real-life incident that happened on Thanksgiving. One Florida family had their pet turkey named Tom the Turkey kidnapped and killed by a bow and arrow. The robbery happened in South Florida on the victim's 6-acre property. Early on Monday, the victim got up to feed his 50 animals and realized there was something wrong. There were blood and feathers in Tom's pen, and Tom was nowhere to be found. When the victim turned to his security cameras, the video showed one man snatching Tom while another ran along the fence. The victim went to the police, who later tracked down 2 men who admitted that they had entered Tom's pen and took him out with a bow and arrow. They then slung the animal into the back of their pickup truck. When the police caught up with them, they said they were on their way to butcher the bird in preparation for Thanksgiving. Police arrested Joshua Anderson and Jacob Prava and charged them with armed burglary and various other charges.
Buckle up. The next Thanksgiving story may leave most of you creeped out before ever feasting at someone's dining table next Thanksgiving. As a disclaimer, you might lose your appetite after this one, so we suggest you eat beforehand.
I've been studying engineering at university for a couple years now. Since starting my higher education, I became close friends with a guy named Eddie. We would always study together even if we didn't have the exact same classes. We had our fair share of cagey, socially anxious students, but none were worse than Charles. Last semester, Eddie and I had advanced robotics together, so naturally we sat next to each other towards the middle of the room. Charles always sat as far back as the professor would let us, since it was such a small roster. I never knew much about Charles, except that he was a creepy loner emo type with long greasy hair straight out of the mid-2000s. He always wore the same black jeans and oversized sweater every day, so he had a bit of a smell to him too. But the most different thing about Charles was the way he constantly fidgeted during class, muttering to himself about this and that. His favorite thing was apparently Thanksgiving, because he talked about it all the time while talking in this weird, cheesy Joker impression.
Is it Thanksgiving yet? I can't wait to have some juicy, delicious turkey in my mouth. So close, so close.
I always wondered how such a clearly unhinged weirdo got enrolled into even a semi-prestigious university. But his skills in robotics must have been stellar to make up for everything else about him. I never wanted to find out though. But of course, the day came when the professor gave us a group assignment and told us to get into teams of 3. Obviously, Eddie and I were 2, but it seemed like everyone else was taken in a matter of seconds, leaving us with no choice but to work with Charles. The assignment was Thanksgiving themed, and we were supposed to have it done by the time we got back from break. For that reason or another, there was an insidious smile on Charles' face that gave both me and Eddie a really bad feeling about working with him. We all exchanged numbers so we could brainstorm over text. But mainly Eddie and I were just ignoring everything he sent us while we figured out ways to do the whole thing without him. Still, we knew we had to appease him somehow, so we both agreed when he invited us over to his house for an off-day Thanksgiving dinner, where we could discuss more concrete plans for the project. Charles said his parents were out of town for the weekend, so it would just be the 3 of us. Eddie and I tried to coordinate so we would arrive at the same time. That way neither of us would be alone with Charles. I texted Eddie when I left my place and he said he was already on the way, so it seemed like it would work out. When I arrived, I didn't see Eddie's car in the driveway. I made my way to the front door and rang up his phone once more, but still no answer. Then, Charles opens the front door wearing an apron with the most unhinged smile I've ever seen.
Happy Thanksgiving! I'm so glad you could make it. Please, come in.
Is Eddie here?
I think he should be arriving soon. Just come inside.
Right off the bat, I could tell Charles was acting strange. Even more so than usual. But I went inside despite the weird feeling. I sat down at the dining table while Charles went into the kitchen.
Have a seat! Eddie should be here any minute now.
Okay.
You'll see there's already some sides out on the table. Feel free to have some. I'll bring the turkey out in a sec, okay?
Alright, dude. I was already creeped out, but I figured Eddie was close by, so I decided to shoot him a text, urging him to disclose his ETA and arrive as soon as possible.
Where you at, man? What's your ETA? I need you here. It's so awkward right now.
A few minutes passed and still no sign of Eddie. Not even a response to my texts. I started getting antsy and decided to call him. Right away, heard his phone ringing from inside the house. It seemed like the rings were coming from the kitchen. Eddie had a very distinctive ringtone, so I knew it had to be his phone. Quietly, I got up and crept toward the kitchen. His phone was blasting at full volume right around the corner.
Hey!
I was just about to step in when Charles came careening around the corner.
No guests in the kitchen. Get back to your seat, Mr. Snoopy.
Okay.
Have a seat. The turkey is done, so if you want some, I'll need to see some manners.
Okay, Charles. The turkey smells delicious. Charles was blocking me from going into the kitchen, so I was forced to go back to my seat. As I did so, Charles put the huge platter down at the center of the table and took the seat directly across from me. I was literally starting to shake and hyperventilate. Eddie's phone was still going off and Charles was staring at me with the psychotic look in his eyes. Is that Eddie's phone ringing in the kitchen over there?
Of course not! It's my phone. I told you already. No guests allowed in the kitchen.
I held my phone out and showed him that I was dialing Eddie's phone. A couple rings later and it timed out. In the exact second, the phone in the kitchen stopped ringing.
I know you're lying! Where's Eddie? Oh, come on! Don't you want some delicious turkey? No! Shut up! Tell me where Eddie is! I really thought you were smart. I can't believe you haven't figured it out yet. Isn't it obvious? Eddie is right here!
Charles lifted the dome off the platter, and on it was a turkey with Eddie's head. It was severed and sewn on top of a turkey, and it was moving. Wings, legs, and all. Even Eddie's face was smiling with ghastly wide open eyes.
Happy Thanksgiving. Ha 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 ha.
I ran away and abandoned my car. When I got to a safe distance, I called the cops, and they quickly came to arrest Charles. But to this day, I still don't get it. He wasn't trying to get away with it all. It seemed like all he wanted to do was show off his ability with robotics by reanimating my dead friend. Poor Eddie. Every night since then, his face is all I can see.
Happy Thanksgiving! Ha